Hey beloved, I hope you guys are doing well and that you are blessed. We are continuing with our 7-day International Women's Day series where we are exploring different women in the Bible, and today we're going to talk about Queen Esther. And she's only one of two women that have a book in the Bible. So there's a book of Esther, which tells her story, and then there's the book of Ruth that tells the story of Ruth and Naomi. So quick background on Esther before we get into what we can take from Esther's story is that snapshot. Esther is a young girl when the children of Israel will go underneath the captivity of King Xerxes. I think that's how you say his name. Anyways, he becomes a new king in the region and he takes over the area and he's conquering, Old Testament stuff. And then during his reign, his wife did something that he didn't like, and so it was suggested that he should find a new wife. And so they put out a call and they got all the women in the country to come together, and they went to basically the equivalent of like a beauty school, a beauty pageant school, and they were taught how to beautify themselves, the whole situation, for there to be, a parade for the king to then choose a wife from the woman. And so the whole shebang happens, and then he chooses Esther, not knowing that Esther was one of the Hebrews. Now, once Esther was his wife, therefore the queen, she then has his counsel, and he had this whole thing that you couldn't show up in front of the king unless he had summoned you, or it had been arranged, but you couldn't just like rock up and be like, "What's up, king? How you doing? I came to see you." It didn't work like that. And so while this is happening, Esther's uncle Mordecai is like here, and he knows what's popping, and he is giving her counsel basically, and he is the one person that she can confide in. And so he then discovers a plot where one of the king's advisors was plotting to kill the Hebrew children, and was trying to get the king to pass a law to say that they weren't allowed to worship anyone else, and therefore knowing that the Hebrews would continue to worship God would then mean that they were persecutable by this new law. And so he then says to Esther, like, go tell the king this is not a thing. And Esther's like, I can't, because he hasn't called me, and what if he kills me, da 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 da. And that's basically the background that leads me to the scripture that I want to take out from Esther. So if we go to Esther 4 verse 14 and 15, it says that so this is actually, let's go up to 12. And so from verse 12 to 14, it says, when Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, and this was Esther saying to Mordecai, the king hasn't summoned me, I can't just go. What if he kills me? He sent back the answer to her saying, do not think that because you are the king in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. In other translations, I think it's to say that, who knows that you've been appointed for such a time as this, who knows that you have come into this position for such a time as this. And that's really what I wanted to speak to, because I know a lot is happening around the world as it pertains to women's rights. And, in some parts of the world, we see women's rights, women receiving more rights, and in some other parts of the world, we see women's rights being taken away. And essentially, this fight for rights that women have, and I think the whole world should be fighting for, has been happening since the beginning of time. If you want to argue about what actually happened with Adam and Eve, but it's a chat for another day. Okay, so women's rights are something that have always come under fire, and women in leadership is always something that is contested to various different cultural and religious views, right? Subtext point is women should be leaders. We're born, created, designed, purpose to be leaders. That is the mandate that is given out in Genesis. We'll talk about that when I talk about Eve later this week. Women are competent and all those good things, right? But when we talk about women in leadership, what I want to get to is when we are in positions of leadership, when we are in positions or in networks or in spaces where we can make a difference, where we are the ones to challenge the status quo, and we don't, or we feel scared to because we're worried what the people around us will say, or we're concerned about how people will respond to the thing that we're challenging or the thing that we're calling them out on. And so I will then want to say to you, in the environment that you've been called to, in the space that you're in the thing that as I'm talking, you're like, yeah, I've been meaning to call them out on that. Like, I know this is the thing that I'm called to do. And you haven't done it because of whatever fears and concerns that you have. What if I lose my job? What if I get sidelined? What if, what if, what if? And a lot of those what ifs are very valid, right? There are contexts where speaking up has consequences, right? But leadership requires us to look at the consequences of speaking up and weigh them against, well, what if we don't speak up? So what if we never did strike? What if we never did fight for our rights? What if we never did protest? And I'm forever eternally grateful to all the women who came before me that fought for women's rights, and all the Black people and all the Africans that came before me that fought for our rights and liberations, that I, as a young Black woman today, could have access to all the things that I have access to, right? It cost some people their lives for me to have my freedom. And so we always have to weigh up the cost of what if I speak up and what if I don't, and the word to use to say, how would you know? What if you have come to power? What if you have come to this position? What if you have come to this circumstance, to this place, to this person, to this environment for such a time as this? What if this is the time that you have been anointed and appointed and called to change the status quo? And that's what I wanted to share about Esther. What I do look at when I see Esther's story is her hesitancy, that she goes, okay, sure, I'm in this position. It could just be because I'm pretty, or it could be because God put me here, sure. But now that I'm here, I kind of want to be safe, and I don't really want to upset the king. And so when you look at yourself and how you show up, is it your tendency to look out for yourself first, or do you look out for other people? When you need to speak up about something that is wrong or an injustice that you see, is it easy for you to speak up, or do you second guess yourself a lot because you're worried about the consequences? And then who's in your support group, right? So who do you go to? So throughout the book of Esther, we see Esther leaning on Mordecai for wisdom and counsel. But then after this incident, once Mordecai sent the response to say, how do you know you were made for this? She then sends a message to him to say, okay, cool, fine, I will speak to the king. But before I do, please fast with me for 3 days. And so all the Israelites fast together for 3 days. And at the end of those 3 days, she then appears before the king without him summoning her, says what she needs to say, receives favor, the plot is uncovered, and the people who wished the Israelites ill got what was due to them, right? And so to say, what might happen if you did speak up, and then who's in your support group to help you speak up, right? So do you have a tribe that you can call on? So the question for today is, how do you show up as Esther? Do you see yourself in Esther? What are some of the areas in your life where you need a little bit of courage to speak up and do the thing that you know in your gut is absolutely right and you should be doing and addressing? And if you're not, what is the push, the nudge, the encouragement that you need to make it over that line and help you see that you're not just in the position that you're in because you're bomb, and you are, right? You definitely are where you are because you worked hard and you're bomb. But you're also in the position that you're in to keep opening doors and to create access and to pull others up as you go. So in what ways are you doing that? I invite you to reflect on how you show up as a woman, and let me know in the comments below, what can you learn, or what do you learn from Esther's story?